You're listening to RevOps FM with Justin Norris. If you work in tech and started your career sometime after 2012, your sense of what's normal in business is probably a little bit skewed. For about 10 years, we lived in a world where SaaS companies aimed to grow at all costs. They were raising vast sums of money and burning that cash almost as quickly, pouring it into salespeople, advertising, technology, etc. And the strategy basically was, let's grow quickly enough to reach that next funding round. It was a world with relatively little accountability or scrutiny around many types of go-to-market expenses, and certainly not one where profitability was the end goal, at least for most companies. So that world is gone now, maybe gone for good, and many go-to-market professionals are still struggling to understand exactly what it means and how to adapt. So here to help us figure that out, we have Jacco van der Kooij. He is the founder of Winning by Design, a B2B revenue consulting and training company focused on sustainable growth. He's one of the most influential go-to-market thought leaders around and author of the book Revenue Architecture. Jacco, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
It is an absolute pleasure and a treat to be here. Thank you for having me.
I want to start off with a little bit of a retrospective. In preparing for this episode, I listened to a recent podcast appearance you did on the Revenue Letter with Tony Holbein. And I'm going to bounce off some of the ideas that you shared there, and then we'll go a little bit deeper into the current state and what we should do going forward. But in that show, you referred to what you called the Golden Age of SaaS from roughly 2012 to 2021. Talk us through a little bit, like what was that golden age and what were the conditions that existed during that time?
Yeah, fantastic question. So late 2011, Mark Andreessen came out with an influential post, and it says, why software is going to eat the world. And in that post, he outlined for what nowadays we know as the SaaS wave of companies that came. When he launched that post, we were dealing with what we refer to as Gen 1 SaaS companies, Salesforce and so on and so forth. Since that day, we have launched over 36,000 SaaS companies. And all these companies during the time frame from between 2012 and late 2021, essentially launched approximately on the same model. And that model is call up a person, tell them you got a SaaS offering, and then sell them that SaaS offering through a form of pestering, emails, phone calls, and whatnot, social engagement, and close that deal shortly follow after that. That was the main way of doing that. Now, the way we could afford that is we used relatively low-cost salespeople, aka sales development reps, in order to make those calls. Over time, tools like Outreach and SalesLoft and Groove, all that came to perform that task. On the lower end, Mixmax is another tool. And they provided that email automation combined with the SDR in order to create industrial scaled pestering of buyers. And you pick up the phone and primarily you were trying to tell the buyer why to buy. And that was because there was a balance difference between what the buyer knew about your product and what you had to sell. The buyer often wasn't as aware of the solutions out there, the problems that organizations were running into. And that balance, the difference in balance, was essentially filled in by SDRs, email campaigns, thought leaderships, events, and so on, bringing that buyer up to speed. Well, those days no longer work. That has come to an end primarily in two forms. Number one, the growth rate has come down significantly, about to half of what it used to be during 2019. And the cost has gone up almost twice. So we got half the growth at twice the cost. And that is a problem that we're dealing with today. And as a result, many companies are trying to figure out what to do next now.
I want to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's episode, Knack. I love marketing automation software, but let's be honest, the email and landing page builders are usually terrible. You can't make it nice without a developer, and marketers are going to find a way to break things or go off brand. You do not have time for that. So Knack is totally different. You set the guidelines and then give your users a building experience that's slick, modern, and beautiful. When they're done, everything goes to your map at the push of a button. And don't worry, it supports global teams, approval workflows. It's got your integrations. So head on over to revops.fm/knack. That's KNAK, and get a special offer just for my listeners. As a software buyer during that period, I can just from my own limited perspective, feel how things have changed? Because back in the day, you wanted to buy a new tool and you would, open up a request for finance and maybe make some business case around, if it closes one or two more deals, this tool is going to pay for itself. And it was generally a process of rubber stamping. We had money in the bank. It was great. And there was very little scrutiny around whether those tools actually, did what they were supposed to do, whether, like, a lot of shelfware. Today, at least for me, it's an extremely different process, a much more difficult process to buy software. Are you seeing this dynamic play out where people are now purchasing in a completely different way?
What you are experiencing is the old style versus the new style of buying. So if you go back 20 years, it becomes real clear what you're buying on. You're buying on two things. Now, if I go back, let me go back even further. I go back 50 years. 50 years ago, when we're selling high tech is sold in millions of dollars. And that means that there are only few organizations who can afford that. Those organizations, therefore, are qualified. Do you get the budget for this? And so IBM computers became big, and therefore they launched a process called BANT, right? Do you have the budget? Are you the authority? And what's the timeline that you need it? Now, if you progress from there, let's say that happened in the 1960s. If we progress to early 2000s, many people are buying routers. And as routers come out, the technology accelerates so fast that the new generation of routers outperforms the previous generations of routers by a landslide in a matter of years. But in this case, routers are written off over a 7-year period. In order to overcome that, sellers now have to offer what is called an ROI. Hey, I'm buying back your old routers, I'm selling you the new routers, and in the next 3 years, you're going to make a huge amount of profit based on what these new routers can do in this rapidly growing world that we today call the internet. We just have two specific methods, BANT and the second method being ROI, so budget and ROIs. Now, if we go back to the early 2010s, we are still selling for the past decade on budget and ROI. But the point is this. SaaS services, by definition, have a 10x ROI. By definition, it's the way how the pricing was created. Grab the $1 million up front, you're paying the $1 million up front, you pay $5,000 a year, right? Or $10,000 a year, or $20,000 a year. So the ROI, by definition, is becoming positive, 10x. Every SaaS service, by the very definition, can say, folks, you close one deal on what we sell and the product pays back for itself. It pays for itself is one of the most common pitches. Therefore, budget is always available. Like when you sell a company a $5 million software solution like SAP and Oracle in the early days, folks, you got to have budget for that. And that got to be allocated. But if I sell you a $10,000 annual service, of course, there's some budget available somewhere. What you're experiencing, as simple as you say it, right, is that budget and ROI no longer are qualified. You no longer have access to that, or they can no longer be used. What we today are experiencing is that people are buying on priority. Is this important to me right now? Of course I have the budget. Of course I know you have a 10x ROI, but I cannot afford every software SaaS product that can sell a 10x ROI. So I can only have 2 or 3. And every quarter I can only add 1 or 2 at most. So are you the one of all the ones that offer 10x ROI? Are you the one that I need right now? And the problem with priority is it fluctuates. And most organizations have not adjusted to selling to priority. They primarily are still selling based on ROI and budget. And that's a mismatch.
And so as a team experiencing that mismatch, where does somebody begin? The circumstances have changed and we have teams chugging along in the same way that they have been. And all of a sudden, like the ground's falling out from underneath them. Maybe you've got people calling you, Jacco, like, what do I do? Things aren't working the way they used to. Like, what are you telling people about how to adapt?
Yeah, I'm going to give you a few basic principles to work with. First of all, may I ask, do you like being sold to? Do you like somebody knocking on your door? Do you like being stopped in the street? Do you like receiving endless amount of emails? Do you like being sold to today?
Almost never, no.
Okay. People hate being sold. Universal. Okay. There's a rare exception like my brother, who all of us in the family go to when we buy a car because he loves to pester sellers at the dealership, right? We all have one of those in the family. Everybody else hate being sold to, right? We literally begrudgingly and with heavy heart go to a dealer in order to buy a car nowadays. We hate being sold to. But let me ask you this. Do you sometimes love to go to an Amazon or similar and go buy a product that you already know what you want? You just, you love to buy, don't you?
Sometimes a bit too much.
Okay. So human beings, rule number one, we hate being sold, but we love to buy. Number two, very important. Buyers define the process, not sellers. Buyers define how they want to be sold to. We cannot tell them how they're going to buy from us. It won't work on a skill. Will it work occasionally with a customer? Absolutely. But 9 out of 10 times, if they have an RFP process, you can use all the provocative and challenging techniques in order to try to figure that out. But yes, 1 in 10, you win, but the other 9 you will lose because you're not adhering to the process. Buyers define the process, not sellers. And number 3, when you are selling to a customer, you have to give them a great buying experience. If the experience is not great, and experience can be fast turnaround, detailed discovery call, fantastic demo, whatever it is that they want, you got to give them a fantastic experience. Not on every call, but you got to have a pretty decent. Now, if it's a high velocity sale, it needs to be like quick responsive time. If it's a detailed product, then you got to keep a simple demo. If it requires the entire team on their end to meet, you need to run a fantastic stakeholder meeting. Whatever it is, you need to match to their process with excellence. Those are the 3 things. If you do these 3 things right, you're going to be successful in today's modern sale. Most people think that they can tell the buyer how to buy. They focus on a sales experience and they don't excel in several of the steps that they do. And they think that the product is so good, it will simply overcome that. Well, we got 36,000 products that are competing for budget right now.
So to drill a little bit deeper into that in the context of a sales process, because it's a strange contradiction, like you say, like people, they don't want to be sold to, and you're absolutely right. And yet we have to engage in this dance with salespeople to get our buying objective done. How can a sales team, I'm a VP of sales and looking at my process, where would I start to try to make this more delightful and more differentiated?
I love that you use the term dance. And the reason I say that and why I'm triggered by dancing is as follows. With dancing, there are moves that both partners know. But every time it is executed slightly different. You may be in a different dance room. You may be in a different setting. The music may be different. But yet, you execute the dance in a way that is repeatable. There are certain moves. That is referred to as process. And this is what is the number one thing that people oversee, particularly SaaS. Most SaaS companies are startups trying to become scale-ups, right? And most of them, when they become a startup, they've done so by ignoring processes. Now, as they become successful, they reach $1, $2, $3, $4, $5 million in revenue. And as they grow, they often grow over a relatively short period of time, about 18 months to 24 months. They grow from a 10 to 20 person company to a 80 to 100 person company. In that, they're growing extremely fast during a critical time, at a time that they do not have processes in place. And so it becomes an 80 to 100 person company in a relatively chaotic way. Lack of processes. Now, these 80 people that join the company in that period of time, they look at it and they go like, you don't have an onboarding process, you don't have this. And they bring their old processes with them from the previous company. And this mishmash from all this like diverse cultures of processes is all mismatched into a company at 100 person running at like $10, $50 million. And it is absolute chaos. We're running multiple go-to-market machinery. We're running ABM campaigns. We're having SDRs. We're having like a fantastic online purchase experience. It is all randomized and we have not focused on anything. And almost every company at $10 to $20 million runs like that. Like 9 out of 10 run like that. And that is not a successful way to go. 1 out of 10 does find its way. Now, if I tell you what is the primary way that HubSpot became known for, what is the GTM motion that they made popular?
Inbound marketing.
HubSpot and inbound marketing. What they sell and how they sell it is a perfect match. Right? Now, if I tell you, what is Slack used for? What kind of motion did they use?
Product-led growth.
Product-led growth. The product, what they sell and how they sell it, perfect match. What do you hear a lot of Tesla owners, how did they buy and why they're always bragging about how they bought? What is the great experience that a Tesla buyer buys at that they brag about? What you'll see, a lot are buying online. They picking online, they check boxes, and then the Tesla gets delivered. In a weird way, a self-driving car and a self-buying experience itself are two a match. And so every time, if I speak of these things are a match. This is the way how you achieve $10 to $20 million. You focus on one GTM and you make it work. In that go-to-market motion, in that one motion that you have, you pick a handful of experiences that your customer on that journey really appreciates. If you have an online experience, you better have a really easy and conversion website, really fast response time. I don't want to click and have to wait for a week for you to set up my instance on how I can use your software, right? I want to click, I want to immediately log in, I want to download it right away, whatever it is that you make me do, but I want instant. PLG, instant. If I have deep enterprise sales, I want to make sure that my discovery call with you is detailed, that I have an architect available to me, that I can have a detailed experience with that, right? I want to make sure, does it integrate with my system? Can I ask you about which version of Salesforce you integrate with and how you access my content and what the security privileges are? In a way, that matches the buying experience. So you have to make that a phenomenal experience. But you don't need to focus on dozens of moments. All you need to do is a handful. Because if you make those moments excel, stand above, it will pull all the other moments that you engage with a customer up.
In dealing with sales teams and supporting them, I've observed like this distribution where generally have a few wizards who can pull rabbits out of hats and who can figure, like, whatever the problem is, they'll just find a way. Like, that's just in their DNA and they can make it work. And you have some people that can kind of go through the motions and you know, there's a curve from there. To what extent at that pivotal change, that stage where a company is starting to scale that team into the 10 million to 100 million range, should they be looking for like the superstars, the rock stars, or should they be looking for people who can just, you will follow the process that I've laid out in a capable way?
In the end, if you can hire 10 superstars, hire 10 superstars. Superstars will generally help you progress the fastest and so on and so forth. The problem is, out of every 10 superstars you hire, only one is a superstar and the other 9 are wannabe superstars who think they're already superstars, who want to be paid like superstars, but they unfortunately don't perform like superstars, right? And that's why we call superstars superstars. There's only, a few of them. The other 9 simply have to execute process. Now, what the superstar really does well is they can make a lemonade out of lemons. They can find what is the most successful way of selling. Then with that, they in a way establish a processes. They're cutting their way through the forest, so to speak, right? With a machete, you're cutting through it. And as they come to the other side, they have created a path. That path is a repeatable process that needs to be executed by the next ones, who all think they're superstars, who are all starting to cut into the forest, but they don't know where the other side is. So they end up at random spots, costing you lots of money. It's the wrong thing to do. They should just follow what the superstar has done. Now, the superstar likes to keep going on that route, circumvent any processes along the way. And at some point in time, you want to pull that superstar out and go like, okay, calm down. I still need you, but I need you to open up a new market, a new region, sell a new product, open up a whole new thing for a brand new product that we've created. That's where superstars excel at. That should be replaced by a repeatable sales force. The marker where that occurs is between $8 to $10 million. Superstars on your first go-to-market motion, you need them to take you to $5, $6, $7, $8 million in revenue. Then process needs to take over. And by about $15 million, your company needs to be so ingrained in processes that you can deploy your superstar on a new GTM motion, a new market, a new product and whatnot.
When you're talking about process, repeatability, this is the language of revenue operations, and large percentage of the listeners of the show kind of fit into that bucket. Talk about the role that RevOps can play in helping facilitate this transition.
So there's two kinds of roles that are very similar that play from two different tacks, RevOps and FP&A. Imagine the following. I got three systems. I got the lead generation system, the lead development system, and the sales system. And for the time being, I'm only looking at the acquisition, okay? So I got the lead generation, lead development, and sales system. Now, the lead generation system, who's responsible? Who's responsible in January to generate leads?
Marketing.
And who's responsible for developing leads?
Sales development, SDRs.
SDRs. And who's responsible for closing the leads, for closing the opportunities?
The sales team.
Okay, now who's responsible for all those three?
Well, a chief revenue officer, if you have one, who's overseeing all three.
And what I'm going to describe is you go for the CRO. I want you to think these three processes, these three systems, lead gen, lead development, and sale, are three different subsystems. Each system with its process. When you combine them, they create a fourth system. This fourth system is the system of the three combined, aggregated, all together. It's a fourth system. That fourth system has its own attributes, has its own characteristics. That fourth system says, if you generate too many of the wrong leads, I'm going to spend a huge amount of resources on my sales, which is the most expensive part of what I'm having. And so now what I'm seeing is I am abusing my salespeople, costing extensive amount of money. This is the thought for you to consider. What we see here is that fourth system, with all of its own and unique requirements, that's the RevOps.
So looking across the entire scope of the go-to-market process and finding how are these interacting with each other? Where are we seeing inefficiencies? Where are we seeing waste? Is that what you mean?
That's right. And where we're seeing waste is a phenomenal one. But often at the connective points, what leads are generated, which lead developments are working, and so on. The entire process. Now, if you think about it, client acquisition cost covers all of marketing and sales. CAC payback discusses all of the acquisition. These are typical things that RevOps are very responsible for. Now, a CRO goes beyond that. The CRO, in many cases, should also cover the revenue generated from existing customers. I want you to think about the following. In your world, what does the CRO cover? Marketing, sales, and customer success, or just marketing and sales, or just customer success? What is today's common CRO? What do they cover?
I can speak for my company. They're really just focused on sales and account management. Success is separate, marketing is separate. And I often see them maybe covering sales and success with marketing being separate, not always. But I often see marketing splintered out. Okay,
follow my thinking down here. I'm operating a business at $1 million ARR, recurring revenue. Let's say I have a $1 million budget in marketing, right? I'm spending it all on acquisition, right? Win more deals at $1 million. 100% goes to win more deals. I'm operating a business at $5 million in revenue. I got $2 million in marketing budget. Where does most of my marketing budget get associated with? Where do I spend almost all my marketing on at 5 million in ARR?
It's still acquisition, I would say.
Okay, at 10 million.
Usually still acquisition.
Okay, now I want you to imagine this bar of recurring revenues going up. And this bar, in the beginning, it's all acquisition. And the acquisition piece is going to get nothing but a tiny sliver sitting on top of the retention. At $100 million, I'm running $95 million retention at that point in time. And a tiny sliver of $5 million comes from acquisition and expansion, right? Everything else is renewal. Where am I still spending the lion's share of my marketing on?
I would say the majority of companies are still focused on acquisition.
And I'm talking 95%, right? It's not like, oh, it's 60-40. No, I'm talking about for every $19 on acquisition, there's $1 on. Why is that? Because the chief revenue officer continued its focus primarily to see where growth comes from. Its growth mindset is still that of where we were 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, where does growth come from every quarter? Win more deals. Because if I don't win deals, then I don't have any new revenue. So this growth mindset, that most growth comes from acquisition and a disproportionate amount of spending. Now, you say marketing dollars, right? let's not forget that acquisition also contains the lion's share of all the salaries and compensation plans. In that tiny sliver, a huge amount of spending also goes to sellers. That tiny sliver it's on top of that bar. That is because the CRO, although they carry the title of CRO, in most cases is nothing more but a VP of sales who promoted up to a CRO role. What we need when that CRO is, RevOps need to look over the entire thing and says like, hey, not only do I got the 3 systems, lead generation, lead development, and sales, I also got onboarding, I got retention, I got expansion. That is a total of 6 processes, all of them combined in a total system process called recurring revenue. RevOps is responsible for all of it. And it communicates with the CRO in processes and data. And that is how it explains to the CRO what works and what doesn't. Now, what's missing here is the final piece, is the financial planning and accounting team. And for me, the role of the future is that RevOps needs to know a little bit more about FP&A, and FP&A needs to know a little bit more about RevOps. And the way to communicate to the CRO is not through the enablement team, is not telling the team, oh, the enablement team, we need to train people better, but it's to the finance team. And it says, based on what we're seeing, here's where our money can be spent most efficiently with the most effectiveness. That's the modern CRO. The problem is that the CRO needs to be capable of allocating budgets to marketing and tell marketing, you need to spend more on customer marketing. They need to force marketing to do that. And today the CRO cannot do that, like you said, because most of the time the CMO is still out. That makes the CEO the per de facto GTM, the person responsible for GTM. It's the person who can allocate the budget to the right thing, advised by RevOps and FP&A. Now, RevOps looks at conversion rates, FP&A looks at salaries, right? Like everything else, it's the same thing. Like they look at the business the same way, efficiency and effectiveness. But one has more of a cost mindset, the other one has more of a growth mindset.
Big thanks goes out to UserGems for sponsoring today's episode. We all know that outbound is tough. You dial and you email and you get the door slammed in your face by people who don't know who you are. Now imagine a world where you're reaching people who know your product, love your product, and are actually happy to hear from you. UserGems makes that a reality. They identify your customers and champions who change jobs and automatically push new contacts into your CRM so your team can follow up. Their outreach playbooks make it dead simple to get started, and their team is amazing. If you're not reaching out to customer job changers, you're missing opportunities. Head on over to revops.fm/usergems for a special offer just for my listeners. That makes total sense to me. And let's say the CRO is persuaded by this financial data. You still have the very difficult challenge of getting these messy human beings that we call salespeople or sales development reps to follow a process. And I don't need to tell you that there are challenges inherent in doing that. It's way easier to program a machine and create automations, but getting salespeople to follow that process is super hard. And open-ended question, how do you solve that problem? How do you think about that problem and getting everybody to row in the same direction? Because it's as someone working in the field, I can tell you it is exhausting. I'm sure you know the same.
Okay, now, unfortunately, right at the same point in time, artificial intelligence joined the chat, so to speak, right? And so I want you to think of the following. Help me out here. Tell me some of the things that when you as a buyer that you most value in a seller. Tell me, what are the skills, the traits that a salesperson has that you most value, that you really want to speak to a sales organization about?
They're perceptive, thoughtful. They're truly thinking about my business and my needs and are responding with unique critical thinking about my problems, highly responsive, highly accountable. Those are at least some of the key things that come to mind for me.
But knowing the product should be base knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Knowing that product.
Table stakes.
Knowing you, the base level, should also be base knowledge, right?
Agree.
Following up diligently should be part of the course here, right?
Yeah.
Preparing properly for the call should be done, right?
Absolutely.
Now, what you'll see is if I identify all these as specific tasks. I say, you got to know your product. You got to know the customer. You got to prepare the call to make sure that it's relevant for them. You got to follow up diligently, and you got to have a great call. If I call these 5 steps, then I can tell you at least 3 of them can be replaced better by AI, right? If I have 20 sellers and I can replace 3 out of the 5 tasks with AI doing a better job, that means I replace 60% of the capacity. Let's say that it's all evenly skilled. That means I suddenly don't need any longer 12 sellers. 60% of 20 is 12. I only need 8 sellers. Okay. What I want to talk to you about is that today, I want you to think about digging a hole with a shovel. And today, I need 20 people to dig that hole. But then an excavator is invented, and the excavator can do a lot more. Now, I still need to point where the hole is. I still need to make sure that I avoid the gas lines and the water lines and dig around it. But I don't need 20 people digging the hole any longer. Now, the reason why I use this analogy is, were human beings designed to dig that hole in the first place? I say that today we have 20 sellers, not because we need them, but because it was the only way we were able to fill the gap. We have actually overhired too many salespeople. And now, for example, with the sales development role, we say, oh my gosh, we need to fire so many sales development because AI does a better job or does a lower cost job, whatever it is. What you find is we were not supposed to mass email people in the first place. We're doing the wrong job and we're using human resources to do that wrong job. And now we're automating that with AI. We're completely on a wrong process executing it. In sales, this is in many cases, this is the way. We're calling on way too many customers for the wrong reason, just trying to pitch something. So today we're using AI mostly to do more better. We want to do more. And growth at all costs was all about doing more. And now we're deploying AI to do more better. What we should deploy AI on is do better. We should have a better process. We should target our customers better. And AI can do and help us very well with that. So while we're still in the age of do more better, the successful companies will trend towards do more better. Target better, have a better experience on the phone when they're with the customer and so on. And that unfortunately requires fewer salespeople because we have such a large amount of salespeople. I can literally hear the fatigue in your voice of having to work with salespeople who don't want to adhere to process. Well, folks, when you do that in the engineering trade, you're no longer going to be an engineer. When you do that to software coders, you're no longer going to be software coders. If welders don't weld the way they're supposed to weld and don't prepare and wear the protective masks, they're going to be out of a job. They're going to be replaced by robots that do a better job. So too the case with AI. AI will be in the same way replacing human capacity in sales and marketing roles the same way that robots have replaced welding in manufacturing jobs. And it will be okay. And we will be better off as a trade because of it.
So if I'm a salesperson that wants to have one of those few chairs that are remaining, at the end of the game of musical chairs, they're removing some of the salespeople, but we still need some of them. What are the key skills that only a human will continue to be able to do, in your opinion?
Be passionate about your customer. The point is, an AI system can do things more, higher frequency, can do it 24/7, can do it at lower cost, can do it at higher quality. The only thing that AI doesn't have is emotion. And what makes a human so strong is our emotional capability. One of those signals, there's others, is passion. Passion is what keeps somebody up at night when they wake up in the morning and say, I now know what the customer's problem was and how I can help them solve it. That is passion. If you have passion and you develop expertise, then you have nothing to be afraid of. Your problem is not that you're going to be replaced by a robot. You're not. You're going to be replaced by a passionate human being who uses AI. That's what you're going to, because they found that with AI, they can diagnose the customer better. They can write a better solution. They can customize the proposals better. You are being replaced by a human who uses AI, not by AI. That's the thing that most people are fearful of, because they go like, dude, this was such a fantastic, easy money-making gig that I had. I had to do very little, and I closed a little, and I made if you compare that, salespeople often make once to twice as much as people who had to study an additional 4 to 6 years to get a degree in what they're delivering. Salespeople can get that without any education, right? They just need a base education to get their foot in the door, and then the developer, often they have some degree of psychology or language or something like that, but often their degree has no relationship to their job.
So I'm just, again, immersing myself in like my own experience and perspective as a buyer. I like buying software. I really want to have an unmediated experience with that software. So ideally, like, I want to see what it looks like. I want to know what it does. I want to read your docs. I don't really need a salesperson to gatekeep that for me. Let's even assume they have that passion and that emotion, and I can completely relate to what you're saying. How are they offering value to me in this situation where I can get the information that I want? It's no longer about information. Where are they delivering value?
It depends on what product you buy. For example, when you buy on Amazon, the primary thing you're buying on Amazon for is how quickly can I get it and how much is the cost. You're not going to buy something on Amazon that you need 3 weeks from now. You're buying on Amazon something that you want to buy tomorrow or sometimes even today is crazy enough, right? In that case, speed is the main thing, speed and low cost. We call that transactional sale. Now, when you're a solution sale, you are primarily asking the buyer and you say to the buyer, here's the difference. I'm looking at you and these 3 other vendors or 2 other vendors. Tell me how you're different. So now you need the buyer's perspective on why they're different. You just want to hear from them what the other 2 are doing right or wrong. We call that solution selling. When you're buying a $20,000, $30,000 solution, you want to learn, am I buying the right solution for me today? And often you understand the problem very well, but you want to learn what are different kind of solutions out there. And then lastly, the provocative sales. This is where I challenge you and make you think totally different about it. I go like, thinking about it the right way. You shouldn't be buying training for your people. You should buy a tool that replaces your people, something like that. There's something totally different. A substitute rather than a competitive solution. That is what the difference is. So in each of these kind of sales, you ask your buyer to do something different. What you generally want is you want to make sure that your buyer matches you with where you have the biggest needs. Whether that is with Amazon speed, whether that's with consultative selling, educate me, or whether that's provocative selling is help me think about this problem differently so I can go to my management. And often I feel already what was wrong. Now, mind you, this is a very important statement. I cannot create a problem that you're having. I cannot create it. I can only uncover it. You and I may both know that you have it, but you don't know how to talk about it yet. You have felt it all along. And while I'm asking you questions, you start to uncover it. Or when I provoke you, it suddenly starts to become plain and visible. But these are the things that you're looking for in a salesperson. Help me get out of my rut. Help me think outside of the box.
When I think of the great salespeople that I've worked with, something that they all had in common was a certain likability. They were good at building relationships. They were good at playing the long game. And is that human-to-human connection, that's not something that it seems feasible for AI to replace, do you think?
It does. So, remember, if I go back 20 years ago, that's how old I am, right? And I wanted to pick an airplane seat in an airplane. I would always want to talk to a travel agent because they knew what the best seats were in a 747-400, right? Today, technology shows me exactly which seat, and I can instantly book that seat. I don't even have to get booked, boom, clack it, right? So today, you would no longer need a trusted resource in a travel agent to book you the right seat on an airplane. Given plenty enough money, you'd rather do it yourself because you can see whether it's next to the bathroom and next to the exit door and whatnot. In this case, the information that you get via, in this case, an app, has balanced the discrepancy between the knowledge that sits on the one side and the knowledge that sits on the other side. Now, trust, the main reason why we want trust is when there's a gap in that knowledge, your understanding of something and the understanding of the person you have on the phone. Now, I can ask you this. I believe that you look to me like the kind of person that gets to know a lot more about the solution you're buying and the problem that you're having than the buyer often can. You look to me like a person who's hard to convince that when I would sell you, you would go, Jacco, I already read your book, checked your website. Here's the 3 things I want to talk about, right?
Yeah, typically.
And so what I'm saying is my skill set as trust is diminishing and it's getting lesser and lesser. Today, if I go back 20 years ago, you would only spend maybe $5 or $10 on buying a book online because you didn't want to give your credit cards because you didn't trust the internet yet. Today, we spend $50,000, $70,000 buying a Tesla online because we trust the brand. We know that the brand will be all right, but the human being in between is no longer as valuable as it once was.
I mean, Jacco, tell me, you have built your public image, your business around training salespeople, providing methodologies to salespeople, developing the practice of selling. And this vision in some ways is, I don't want to use the word grim, but we're saying there's going to be less salespeople. We're saying in a lot of cases they're going to be less important and less relevant. I want to make sure I'm capturing your message right, but how do your stakeholders who are sales leaders, how are they responding to this message?
Because the people that remain are the true professionals that they always were. We still need salespeople. We just don't need 1 million of them. Sales is one of the largest jobs, the most common jobs on the world. And I want you to bring out, do we really need that many salespeople? And I challenge us that to say is like, hey, the reason why we have such bad quality, the reason why people are not following processes and so on and so forth, is because we simply have too many salespeople. We don't need that many. The job of a CRO, the job of a CEO, in most countries except France and China, those are two exceptions, but except France and China, the job of a CEO is not to create jobs. It's not to protect jobs. It's not, like job retention. It is to get the customer the best experience possible at the lowest cost possible to get them to deliver the impact. And based on that, I got to simply say is AI will pay a disruptive role, and that will most likely cost the number of salespeople their jobs. And I don't think that the lower end of that spectrum is a problem that we're losing. Those people will find different jobs. The same way that nowadays we can harvest with tractors rather than with manual labor, right? And we still use manual labor, but in places where we need it. Like we don't have as many horses today. What can I say? It's a good thing. I like to think that the horses are not the primary mode of transportation. Obviously, there's something to say about it from an environmental perspective. But then I can tell you how bad the horse manure and so on was as having grown up on a farm as well. So point being is, it is quite okay. We've had too many people and we have used too much manual labor that was ill-performed by a number of people that we can do better and that we will do better. Now, will this go fast? I like to think this will go bad, and I like to challenge you with the following. I like to believe that we human beings can predict the future pretty well, but in many cases our timing is off. And I like to think that today everything goes a lot faster than we think it does. And so my advice to your listeners is, try to think how your business looks like 10 years from now, and assume that's what it will look like 18 months to 24 months from now. Prepare for that. You do that, you're going to be most likely better off than most.
It's almost unthinkable. I mean, with the release of GPT 4.0 or whatever it is, the thing that can like interpret the physical world and respond to the physical world. I mean, these are things that would have been literally unthinkable. I mean, they were thinkable in terms of science fiction, but not thinkable in terms of reality a year ago. It's almost very difficult to even envision a scale as like 10 years at this moment, I find at least.
Yeah, for me, it is easy to predict how a future will look like, right? Or easier to predict. And it's simple. Buyers dictate the process they want to buy. Buyers love to buy, but hate being sold. The key thing that we all know, every sales professional knows, is the true sales process is not when you close. It's not when you negotiate. Those are the last two steps. The true sales process is educating the buyer early on, learning from them what they need and educating them on what is best for their needs. And I believe that as we go forward, is a lot that we see. Human beings today, we all think about how the AI process is changing the seller. I just want you to understand the way how buyers buy are going to change much faster using AI than our sellers use AI. And so buyers are going to learn a lot more, getting RFPs, selection criteria, all that going to be determined much quicker. And so It will drive the process, as always. And that will make a few of us, 10%, 20%, stand out from the crowd. And that few will always have a job because they are passionate about what they do, working with customers. And they have an expertise in what they're doing, helping a customer solve the problem that they're having. And every customer needs to be provoked. AI is superseded by one thing and one thing only: process. But AI will make skills arguably disposable.
Can you unpack that statement, that AI makes the skills disposable? Which skills?
Many of you are on Instagram. Many of you yourself and others may be on Instagram, right? Or on YouTube Shorts. And you see these short videos. I assume you are?
Familiar. YouTube, yes. Instagram, no. But I'm familiar with the genre.
Okay, now let's say that I want to learn how to take a great photograph in Venice or something like that, right? And I'm using my iPhone. I assume you and yourself and all the listeners have seen plenty of YouTube videos that show you, you throw a splash of water on the table in front of you, you line up your camera exactly, and so you see the mirror image, blah, 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 something like that, right? You see some great nifty trick on how to create some photographs with whatever things that your phone can do nowadays, right?
Yep.
Okay, and so you no longer need to go to a 4-year education in photography. You can just learn it on Instagram right now. And so skills are becoming disposable.
Got it.
That is happening everywhere. And for example, on sales calls, combined with call recording technique and analysis, disk analysis of the people who are on the call, we already see through companies like Crystal, formerly known as Crystal Knows, we can already analyze what is the best way to approach a person, what they want to talk about. Combine that with the analysis on the website, combine that with public statements and social media statements and whatnot. You can have a pretty accurate picture of what's going on. Combine that with layoff and Glassdoor ratings. Combine that with funding strategy. When you combine all of it, the picture becomes pretty obvious what's going on at the company. And in most cases, AI will do a lot better job at that than one single. Now, the superstar will always find what is truly meaningful. But the remaining 90% will significantly be layered up by AI. And no longer is the skill of the person seeking that information is as big of a differentiator because AI will do it better. A great example is a company called DataBook who does this fantastically right now, right? Like it makes sure that the executive sellers are way more powered with this technique.
I want to take the focus and shift it just a little bit after the commit, as you call it, or into the post-sales phase, just before we go. And you have this great expression, I'm going to mangle it now, of course. Recurring revenue is a result of recurring impact. I think I got it. And that resonates very well. And I've seen through that, Golden Age of SaaS, many companies growing like gangbusters. They were the next golden child. And I've even gotten those products and been like, this kind of sucks. Like, this isn't going to work long term. And then, of course, predictably, you see them crash and burn. So this has not been a common concept. How will companies have to evolve in terms of their value delivery post-sale in this new age of a bit more of scarcity?
Yes. If I show you this growth chart of a company, and let's say it says $50 million, and I show you that over 90% of the revenue every month, every quarter comes from existing customers, that's where they got to shift their focus to. What we see is essentially we have a challenge on the first principles of growth. If I am a perpetual sales company, now let me talk about first principles. A simple example, unfortunately, I'm going to use American sports. Maybe you can insert in a Canadian sport in a similar nature. To the movie Moneyball, baseball demonstrated that the old first principle was outdated. The movie Moneyball shows that, and it says like, hey, when we start looking at metrics, we can identify players who combined can become a very competitive team, Oakland A's and so on. And a few years later, the Boston Red Sox won championships with their approach that was uncovered to the data-driven nature of analyzing plays. A few years ago, the Golden State Warriors did something similar. They found that the scoring capability of the three-point line was a disruptive means of changing the game. And today, we see that change still prevalent. However, the speed and passing is now becoming way more prevalent in this year's 2024's. We see that the teams that pass a lot and have a big center or a superstar in this case, like the Dallas main player, that they are a differentiator, speed of the play. So, first principles have been challenged and changed the outcome of the game. We have it in Europe, the Ineos bicycling team. used marginal gain in order to create a disruptive event. And nowadays, it's the Jumbo Visma team that modernized that. All these are any point in time that a first principle is being challenged. Elon Musk with the electric car. Once they challenge and you break through, it becomes an immediate dominant factor. Immediate, overnight. First principle challenge, and the first principle often behavior patterns and habits hold that change of first principle, because all the way up to that point of view change, people say, no, it won't work. We got to do it the way it's always been done. And then the first principle is broken and kaboom, suddenly it gives rise to a whole new. We're at that point of breaking down. We're at that point that the old principle no longer works. What is the old principle? The old principle is growth comes from acquiring. Growth comes from spending every dollar you have in marketing on bringing on new customers. Growth comes from expanding. Growth comes from always more leads lead to more deals, lead to faster growth. Now, in this world, it's very akin to me as a runner. This is the same way how in the old days we thought that you could only run faster by doing more and more miles each day, each week. Volume was perceived as the dominant factor to become faster. Well, the 4 mile was broken by a doctor who couldn't run as much. And so he invented a new way of training, which nowadays we would know as the interval training, with a little bit of fartlek training for those of you who know running. But it was primarily interval training, right? Same thing down here. Our game of volume is over. We need to learn. The new principle of growth is not win more customers, but instead win the right customers. Expand with the right customers. And therefore, we don't need as many leads. We need the right amount of leads. And then we need to write the customers, and we need to balance our spending on marketing, not just on winning more customers, but helping our customers achieve the impact that we promised them in the first place. And when we start applying our marketing dollars and creating customer marketing programs that help customers achieve customer use cases, build small communities that relate with each other, not one gigantic communities that we can sell more. No, a community of the Toronto-based group of users that operate in construction or into legal or into fintech, like a little niche groups, develop those customers into little tight communities that help each other achieve impact. Use your marketing dollars for that. The moment we move from doing more better to doing better is the moment in time that we no longer have to fear AI, but where we can embrace AI and leverage it to help us achieve that.
I love that vision. And Jacco, this was a ton of fun. I really appreciate you spending time with me, sharing some of your insights. Check in again in 18 months and see where we're at. See if your predictions have come to pass. But yeah, thank you so much for being on the show today.
You're most welcome. I tell you, 18 months from now, we're still going to need salespeople. And the best salespeople are still the best salespeople. They're still well employed and they're still fantastically compensated. We ditched a whole bunch of riffraff that was not needed in sales. I give you a last point for all of us to leave on and smile. Have you gone through college?
Yes. Yeah.
What was the first year college like? Tell me what it was really like. What was that first year of college really like?
Well, I was a little bit different probably than your average student. I was probably much more of a lone.
What is the average student?
Yeah, they're out partying and they're having a good time.
Okay, what second year of college looked like for the average student?
Yep, starting to buckle down, take it a bit more seriously.
And the third year?
Maybe you're really starting to grind at that point.
And the fourth year?
Well, then the finish line's in sight. You got to get it done.
I remember in that fourth year, I had a bad teacher on a topic I really loved. And I hated it. I wanted a better teacher. In year one, you can celebrate that, like, dude, like, this is going to be easy. In year four, you're so serious about it. Okay, I give you the following. Most salespeople enter sales and have had no experience in that. So to them, the first 4 years in sales actually mimic the first 4 years in college. The first year, dude, I'm loving this job. Look at the money I'm making, your freedom I'm having. This is fantastic, right? Second year, oh crap, I got quota. I just missed it. If I miss it once again, like, oh my God, I'm gone. Third year, okay, this is my job. I want to do it. Fourth year, I'm studying it. I want to learn from the best of the best. Now think of these in years and shorten these years up, not as 12-month cycles, but as 6 to 9 month cycle. And understand, that we have a lot of people who never left college working in a sales road right now. And they're still living that first year of college. They never left. Keep that in mind, folks. For those of you listening, thank you for listening to me. I hope you can take a look at my book, Revenue Architecture. You can find it on Amazon. I want to thank you all for listening. I know I'm a big talker, so giving me the opportunity to share my insights with you has been absolutely delighted. May I ask you personally, give me your 1 or 2 key takeaways. What did you pick up on today that you thought was the number you go like, oh, that changed my way of thinking about something?
It had to be AI and how it's going to impact the sales profession. What are the roles it's going to take over and what's going to be left? I also really, selfishly, as a RevOps professional, appreciate your vision of the role that RevOps can play in the process.
Okay. Well, with that said, I want to thank you all for having me.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jacco. And we will include links to your book as well as to your website, where you really have a phenomenal number of resources just available for free, ungated, I might say. And we'll link all those for our listeners there. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
Hey everyone, I want to invite you over to the RevOps FM Substack community, where you can sign up to get rough transcripts, show notes, longer form articles, and other bonus content. Just head over to revops.fm/subscribe to get free access. I'd also love to know what you thought of the episode and to hear suggestions for topics you want to learn about. Feel free to leave a comment on Substack or send me an email at justin@revops.fm. Thanks for listening.